You know, when we think about the story of a nation, we usually picture a single, neat timeline. But that's rarely how it works. A nation's history is more like a battleground. It's a contested space where different versions of the past are constantly fighting for control of the present. And for Brazil, this fight isn't just some abstract idea, it's a physical, cultural, and political reality that's still playing out.
So that brings up a really big question. How is a nation's story actually told? Is it written down by the powerful, in official documents and carved into state-sponsored monuments? Or is it carried in the bodies and the songs of the people, in traditions that were forged in secret? Well, as we're about to see, the answer is both. And these two versions of the exact same story are pretty much always at war with each other.
On one side, you've got the official story. Let's call it the civilizing crusade. This is the tidy narrative of order, progress, a kind of divine mission, all written down in the history books. But bubbling up from underneath, there's a totally different, hidden story, the fight for survival. And this one isn't written with ink. It's written with blood, sweat, and rhythm. It's a history of resistance. These two stories, they're the competing threads that make up the real fabric of the nation.
Okay, so to really understand this conflict, we've got to go right back to the very beginning. Back to what you could call Brazil's two births. One is symbolized by the cross of the colonizer, and the other by the fist of the enslaved.
This right here, this is from the very first letter ever written from Brazil back to the King of Portugal, way back in 1500. It says the best fruit that can be taken from this new land will be to save this people. Just that one line, it sets up the entire founding myth of the official story. The idea that Brazil was this grand missionary project, a land that wasn't meant to be conquered, but saved. This is the story of the cross.
But at the exact same time, a whole other Brazil was being born. And this one wasn't defined by salvation, it was defined by survival. And its ultimate expression? Capoeira. Now, don't just think of it as a dance you see in the movies. Capoeira was born as a weapon, a deadly, effective martial art forged in the brutal reality of slavery for a mix of different African fighting styles. This is the story of the fist.
And check this out. These two stories, they were running on parallel tracks from day one. In 1549, the official project, the Cross, kicks into high gear when the Jesuits arrive to civilize everyone. But by 1809, the hidden story, the fist, it forces its way into the official record. Capoeira starts showing up in police reports as a crime. And then in 1822, the official state is born with the empire. You've got two completely different histories unfolding in the same place at the same time.
This whole conflict gets even deeper in the 19th century. And this is where the story takes a really fascinating twist. Because that orderly, respectable empire, well, turns out it had a very disorderly and very useful secret.
The official history books, they love to talk about the long reign of Emperor Dom Pedro II as Brazil's golden age. A time of peace, stability, incredible progress, and high culture. It's this image of a nation being built by enlightened gentlemen in fancy palaces.
But here's the hidden reality. At the same time the state was publicly calling capoeiristas criminals, it was secretly and desperately relying on them. This was the age of what they called capoeira política, political capoeira. These fighters became the state's unofficial muscle. They were recruited as shock troops for the incredibly brutal Paraguayan War. Politicians would hire them as violent enforcers called capangas. They even formed their own rival political gangs, or multas, who would literally fight each other in the streets for political control, using moves like the famous rasteira takedown.
So it really makes you wonder, right? Which story is the true one? Was this stable, glorious empire built by men in suits making deals inside a palace? Or was its power actually enforced out in the alleys by fighters who kept razors tucked in their belts? The real answer is, you absolutely cannot separate the two. They needed each other.
All right, so this brings us to the end of the 19th century, with the fall of the monarchy and the birth of the republic. And it's here that the simmering conflict between the two Brazils just explodes into an all-out war for the story itself.
The official story of the Republic's founding paints it as this great popular movement. The reality was, well, it was a lot messier.
It was less of a revolution and more of a backroom deal that went completely sideways. You had this small group of military officers who were worried they were about to lose their influence. So they spread a fake rumor to trick this old, sick marshal into taking action. He thought he was just getting rid of the prime minister. Instead, while he was sick in bed, the plotters got him to sign a document that created a whole new republic, one he never really asked for. So much for power to the people.
And what was one of the very first things this new republic, supposedly founded for the people, decided to do? It declared war on one of the country's most authentic, popular cultures. The Penal Code of 1890 made practicing capoeira an official crime. The very same fighters who had been the shadow army of the empire were now the official enemies of the republic. The irony is just staggering.
This whole paradox really comes to a head with the 20th century leader Getulio Vargas. I mean, this guy is a walking contradiction. On the one hand, he was basically a dictator, inspired by European fascism. He shut down Congress, ruled by himself, and created this massive propaganda machine. But on the other hand, he was this fiery nationalist, and to build his vision of a new Brazil, he did something nobody saw coming. He co-opted the very culture his predecessors had tried to stomp out. He started the process of turning capoeira from a crime into a celebrated national sport. The state that once hunted capoeiristas was now putting them on a pedestal.
And this marks a really fundamental shift in the whole dynamic. The fight is no longer just about who holds the physical power on the streets or in the government. It's now about who controls the narrative. Who gets to decide what capoeira even means? Is it a crime? Is it a folk dance? Is it a national sport? The battle for Brazil becomes a battle for its own biography.
So where does this leave us? This constant churning struggle over the nation's true story, where is it today? Let's wrap this up.
When you look at all this, a really powerful metaphor just jumps out. In capoeira, the most fundamental movement is the ginga. It's this constant, swaying, evasive motion. It's a feint, it's a defense, and it's setting up an attack, all at once. And that ginga, it's the perfect description of the history of Brazil itself, a constant dance between the official story and the hidden one, between the politician's smooth maneuver and the fighter's raw resistance. It is a game where the ultimate prize is the nation's very soul.
And that game, that fight for the story, it is far from over. It's happening right now. It's happening in the halls of power, it's happening in the media, it's happening in the streets. And it leaves us with this critical question. Not just about the past, but about the future. What is the next move? I think we should end on this final thought. From the source material, history is a great gallery of paintings where there are few originals and many copies. It's a pretty potent reminder that a nation's story isn't just something that is. It's something that is made, that is fought over, and that is constantly being remade. The only question left is, which version will end up on the wall?